Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to our analysis of a piece of modern folklore that honestly blurs the line between a standard urban legend and absolute pure terror. Today, we're taking a really close look at the chilling events surrounding a notoriously dangerous stretch of road in India, the Thane Bhiwandi Highway. We're going to break down exactly how a heartbreaking local tragedy somehow mutated into a literal supernatural nightmare. So buckle up, because the details here are genuinely unsettling. I want you to picture the scene exactly as the first responders saw it. It's 3:15 a.m., the air is dead silent on a completely deserted stretch of the highway. Police stumble upon an abandoned car. The driver's side door, wide open. But what immediately sets off alarm bells isn't just that the car is empty, it's the massive pool of blood inside the cabin. And it gets worse. There are these distinct heavy drag marks on the ground, starting right from the door and disappearing straight into the pitch-black jungle bordering the road. I mean, it literally looks as if the driver was pulled out of the car, alive, and just dragged into the darkness. And the craziest part? This was not an isolated incident. That brings us to Section 1, Highway 315 Car Rahasya. See, the case file evidence was really starting to stack up. We're talking about multiple cars being found completely wrecked, either driven off into steep ravines or crashed deep into the jungle. And the drivers? They were either completely missing or their scattered bodies were found days later. Now, local whispers always pointed back to one solitary figure, a woman spotted on the side of the road asking for a lift in the absolute dead of night. But you know how these things go. The local authorities were completely dismissive. Faced with all these mounting complaints from devastated families, the police were officially stamping these cases as just late-night accidents and hastily closing the files. But if we take a closer look, we get a much more terrifying understanding of what was actually happening out there. So how exactly does this entity operate? Let's move right into Section 2, Vivek ka Kaufnak Anubhav. Vivek was just an everyday guy, right? He was just hoping for one final quiet trip home after the COVID lockdowns. But let's walk through his timeline. Right at 12:40 a.m., Vivek spots a woman in a white sari. Her head is down, hair completely covering her face. Against his better judgment, he stops the car. She gets in without saying a word, and then, in this incredibly dry, broken voice, she just says she needs to go home. Almost immediately, the whole vibe in the car shifts. The AC is completely turned off, but this freezing, unnatural cold just fills the entire cabin. Minutes later, it gets so much worse. Vivek is hit with this overwhelming, putrid stench. Think of a mix of wet earth and rotting flesh, so bad it literally makes it hard for him to even breathe. Finally, he gathers up the courage to glance in the rearview mirror to check on her. But he doesn't see a normal passenger. He sees her face entirely mutilated. One side is completely crushed, skin torn, bone exposed, and her eyes, pure dead white. Her jaw unhinges, literally tearing all the way up to her ears, just dripping blood. Panicked, Vivek completely loses control, and the car violently crashes off the road, straight into the jungle. But right before the crash, the entity leans in, her rotting breath right on his neck, and she delivers this absolutely chilling line. "You left me to die. Now I won't spare you." Wow. So, what does this tell us? It tells us we aren't dealing with some mindless, random monster here. This is an entity driven by a very specific, deeply personal vengeance. She truly believes the people she's attacking are the exact ones who wronged her. But eventually, she picked the wrong car. And that brings us to Section 3, Tantriki Koj. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the direct contrast between Vivek's encounter and Satish's encounter. Look, Vivek was totally defenseless. The woman in the white sari entered his car effortlessly and, well, doomed him. Satish, on the other hand, is a tantric. He's a practitioner of esoteric Indian spiritual traditions. When he's driving down that same road, he spots a woman, though this time she's in a yellow sari. She asks for a lift, but the second she reaches for his car door, boom, she is hit with a massive, visible electrical shock. Smoke is literally pouring from her hand, and she flees, just screaming into the jungle. Why did that happen? Well, because Satish had bound his car in ancient protective mantras. This proved beyond a shadow of a doubt to Satish that they weren't dealing with some human prankster. This was a powerful supernatural force, and crucially, one that was highly vulnerable to spiritual warfare. Satish doesn't waste any time after this. He pulls his friend, Inspector Deshmukh, back into the fold, and they decide to stake out the road. They wait patiently for the night of Amawasya, that's the new moon,
a time considered highly spiritually potent in this folklore, and Satish brings in the heavy artillery, his mentor, Guru Pandit Gajanan. The three of them set up right at midnight, directly at the deadliest curve of the highway. And you know what? The environment immediately reacts to them. The temperature absolutely plummets, the air grows incredibly heavy, almost suffocating. Pandit Gajanan actually picks up the soil, smells it, and makes this profound observation. He senses that this isn't just a place of death, it's a place of incomplete pain.
So, that leads us to the most important question of this entire deep dive. Why? Why was a soul so violently bound to this specific, deserted stretch of asphalt? I mean, what could possibly generate that level of incomplete pain? Let's uncover that in Section 4, Ek Dardanak Atit. To find the answer, Pandit Gajanan initiates a fire ritual right there on the pitch-black highway, and this truly horrifying history reveals itself in a vision. It was a terrible accident from years ago. A couple, Manish and Sandhya Thakur, were riding a motorcycle on a night with incredibly heavy rain. Out of nowhere, a speeding truck lost control and collided with them head-on. Manish, the husband, was killed instantly on impact. But the true horror of this story belongs to Sandhya. You see, she survived the initial crash. She was lying there on the freezing wet road, her bones broken, bleeding profusely, literally begging for help. And cars just drove by. People slowed down. They clearly saw her in this agonizing state, but they didn't stop. Why? Because drivers were absolutely terrified of getting entangled in a police case. They prioritized their own convenience over a dying woman's life. Sandhya Thakur lay on that road for hours, slowly dying in unimaginable pain and total despair. It was quite literally the apathy of everyday people that forged her into this vengeful monster. Armed with that tragic truth, the trio prepares for the climax. Let's head into Section 5, Mukti Ka Anushtan. All right, let's break down the intense steps of this exorcism because it is absolute, unadulterated chaos out there. First, Gajanan spreads ash and mustard oil, igniting a powerful ritual fire. He summons her, and she appears in her full, horrifying form, bleeding from her eyes, her white sari just soaked in red. She screams for justice, and the sound is so loud and terrible that all the streetlights completely shatter simultaneously. Inspector Dashmukh's ears literally start to bleed. Satish is being assaulted by these terrifying visions of her past victims rising straight up from the asphalt. But Gajanan, he stands firm. Moving to step 2, he throws a sacred Rudrakshamala at her. This acts like physical fire, burning and binding her spiritual form. Step 3 is absolutely crucial. He feeds the ritual fire with the soil of the road, a bloody cloth, and her husband's ashes, all while chanting these powerful mantras to break the bonds of her trauma. And finally, step 4. He bravely approaches the thrashing, agonizing spirit, applies sacred ash directly to her head, and physically closes her eyes. It's at this exact moment that the demonic persona entirely shatters. The terrifying entity just vanishes, and standing in our place is just Sanja, a terrified, heartbroken woman. Her horrifying screams melt into this pained whimper as she says, "I didn't want to die. I just wanted to be saved." This brilliantly illustrates the sheer tragedy at the heart of the haunting. As Gajanan closes her eyes, the spirit of her husband Manish finally steps out from the darkness. He gently takes her hand. All the anger just leaves her face, replaced by complete peace. And together, their forms dissolve into smoke, fading quietly into the night. Finally, the road is quiet. Local legend says that Highway 315 has been safe ever since that night. Although, on a new moon, some locals still claim to see a couple walking peacefully by the tree line. But the story of Sandhya Thakur leaves us with something much more lingering than just a spooky ghost story. It leaves us holding a mirror right up to our own society. The monster in the story wasn't born from the crash itself. It was born from the cars that just drove right past. So, the absolute most crucial takeaway from this whole analysis is a chilling moral dilemma. Next time someone asked for a lift in the dark of night, stranded and desperate for help, will you stop?